Juan here for Pocketnow, and I feel it's time we addressed the hardware lottery. A tale of two Samsung Galaxies. After spending your hard-earned money, you might end up with an inferior product. Getting all the doom and gloom out of the way, this is a fairly common practice for many smartphone manufacturers. There's a lot of stuff going on inside this phone, and Samsung needs to produce millions of these things to fulfill consumer demand. So for each individual component inside the phone, Samsung might turn to a number of different vendors to fulfill that demand. This has caused a bit of a controversy on the S8, which we're going to get into here in just a bit, but throughout Samsung's history, we've noticed them pulling different camera sensors. Some Galaxies will use a Sony sensor, some Galaxies will use a Samsung sensor. And of course, the most obvious difference in different Galaxy models is the chipset, where throughout most of the world, Samsung will use their own homebrewed Exynos processor, but in North America, especially to get that CDMA support, they have to turn to Qualcomm. Samsung's not the only manufacturer that has to pull pieces from different suppliers. Similar to Samsung's storage controversy, Huawei this year also got themselves into a little bit of hot water with fans in the different storage chips they were pulling for the Huawei P10. Even Apple can find themselves under scrutiny for the different radio and chipset suppliers they turn to produce the iPhone. On the whole, this hardware lottery doesn't seem to overly affect the individual phones which consumers are apt to purchase. At its best, when there are differences, they're typically only differences you would notice under scientific conditions when two phones using different components are performing side by side. We can end up spending a lot of money on these things, so we can get cranky about benchmarking scores, but real-world performance is, again, usually pretty close. But we do run into a problem when a company advertises a certain feature and then doesn't deliver on it. The early specification pages for the Galaxy S8 showed UFS 2.1 storage, but a number of Galaxy S8s shipped out with UFS 2.0 storage. And when that hardware change started getting reported by tech publications, Samsung pulled the specification from their product page. And it might not seem like such a huge deal. It's a 2.0 versus a 2.1. It can't be that significant an upgrade. But with my Galaxy S8 Plus using UFS 2.1 and my S8 using 2.0, we have been able to chart some pretty significant differences in storage performance. Does this tank my daily performance on the Galaxy S8? No, it's still a solid performer. And I'd be hard-pressed to notice any significant differences in daily operation unless I were holding this right next to an S8 Plus and performing the exact same operations throughout my day. But again, if a company advertises one thing and delivers another, I can totally appreciate why consumers are going to be upset by that. I have to believe Samsung is legitimately working towards fulfilling consumer demand using the highest quality pieces and parts that they can assemble. But if you aren't actually able to fulfill what you've promised, then I think you need to disclose that information to your consumers in a more public fashion. And ultimately, that's the biggest takeaway for me in discussing the hardware lottery. More often than not, I'm upset more by a lack of disclosure than I am by these individual minor differences from phone to phone. Just having the information available through a simple Google search, those of us who really care about what storage is in our phones will have access to that information, and the vast majority of the smartphone buying public will still probably be none the wiser. But if you try to handle the situation quietly, say you remove one of the line items in a specifications page, then those of us who do make a lot of noise on the internet are gonna feel like you're doing something really shady, and that we need to alert other people to a potentially anti-consumer situation. More than anything else, before we go rushing for the pitchforks and the torches, I think we just need to remember that making a phone is a very complicated process, because I think we need to save the power of the internet echo chamber for those few times where a company really does try to misrepresent a product, or when there's a consumer safety issue at play. And of course, we want to hear from you. How do you think companies should handle disclosure for those times where there are differences in the hardware components in their products? Drop us a comment down below this video. Those are the kinds of conversations I love getting into. As always, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to this channel for more videos like these, and help us out with some sharing on your favorite social networks. For Pocketnow, I'm Juan, some gadget guy on Twitter and Instagram, and I will catch you all on the next video.